Well,
Yeah.
I'll then talk about a game that I played called Storyteller, which is by the developer. It's a guy called Daniel. I think it's Ben Mergui. And the publisher you'll probably have heard of is Annapurna Interactive, who have done loads of great games, such as What Remains of Edith Finch. They're kind of quite well placed as an indie publisher now. They pick up loads of titles. So if a game is picked up by them, it's probably going to be pretty good. I found that with Storyteller. I thought this was a really interesting premise that they took, and it's a puzzle game, and they say it's a puzzle game about building stories. And the idea is you have several chapters of a book, and each chapter has several scenes. And in each scene, there'll be something such as Edgar murders his wife, and there are lots of different panels within the scene, like it's a comic book, and underneath you'll have these counters that you can move about. So you'll have, for example, characters such as Edgar, his wife. You'll also have different scenes that you can use within the different comic panels, such as love and death, and that changes what happens and what the characters do when you place them within the scene. And the idea is that you're trying to tell the story that the chapter is asking you to tell. So, for example, with the scene with Edgar, you're obviously trying to get Edgar to murder his wife. So you're placing the characters around in different ways, placing them in different scenes until it fulfills that reaction. I've made it sound very boring, but it is actually quite fun. And the idea is there's lots of these different chapters, there's lots of different characters and themes that you get. Some of the ones that you do early on then get swapped around later on to make it a bit more interesting. And it's a puzzle game. That's what it is. You're working out, okay, what can they mean by this title? One of the titles, for example, is called Cured of Vampirism. And you've got to work out what that actually means. You've got Dracula, you've got these two characters, and you've got to place them in these different scenes and work out, well, what does that mean, cured of vampirism? And eventually it'll give you a little tick. What's also fun with this is there are some extra little points you can get for not just doing what it asks you to do. It'll add a little extra thing, such as, but actually this person doesn't die. And that's a little bonus thing you can do. And the whole point is you've got to unlock this ending scene at the end of the book. So you've got to go through, you've got to get each chapter and each scene correct. And then at the end, you unlock the sort of final element of the story. I really enjoyed this. It's pretty simple, but it's very well done. The graphics are pretty cool. I don't know how I would actually describe them. They are a bit comic book-like in a way, but they're not sort of cel-shaded or anything like that. But they're quite sort of minimalist, quite simple. The little animations that you get of the characters when you switch them around and different things happen. One of them dies, one of them falls in love is very cute. And I think they did a really good job of making that kind of a bit sort of artsy, cartoony, but not too much. So it doesn't make it sort of cutesy or gimmicky, because a lot of this, there's a lot of like sort of murdering people and poisoning people, which is quite good fun. So it definitely plays up, I think. It reminded me a bit of Overboard, actually, where you're kind of playing a bit of a trickster most of the time. Really, it's not all about love and marriage and everything. It's often about getting people killed off and that kind of thing. Now, the one thing I will say, much like Kieran said, there was a bit of an issue with his game and the community. Some people have issue with this game with how short it is and the price. So at the moment, I think the price is, it's around £12. Not that should really have anything to do with the review, but it has had some people saying for the amount of time that you play it, which is about 3 to 5 hours. I think it took me about 5.5. But I was streaming it as well. And I will say this, near the end, the final chapter, some of the puzzles are a bit harder. So that did add a bit of longevity. But some people have issue with the fact that it's about 3 to 5 hour game and they paid that amount. And to them, I've got to say, if you played it all the way through and you enjoyed the experience and you completed it, then stop moaning about this game. You clearly enjoyed it enough to complete it all. And I don't know what you think about this, Kieran, but there is this debate about games and longevity and value, but it's a really well made game, I felt, and it did annoy me a bit to see these people complaining about its length.
Yeah, I don't know. So I don't think a game should should really be longer than it needs to be, or shorter. Sometimes games are just the length they need to be. I mean, if we're judging based on how long you spend on it, I mean, Football Manager is going to be the best game ever made. People spend years on it. Sometimes a game just has a really nice idea, and it like is it Florence?
Yeah, I love that. Exactly. That's a really short. That's about 40 minutes. And I suppose the issue with this is people are saying, well, the price point is too high for the length. But I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what listeners think about this. Should the price point be tied to the longevity, or should it be more than that? And I think the problem is a lot of people just tie it down to how long a game takes.
Yeah, I think each game is its own experience, and the time it takes is part of that, but it's more about getting the time right than getting it long.
Yeah, I mean, because we can agree, obviously, if a game was charging £20 and it was a 10-minute experience, it would really have to be quite an amazing 10-minute experience. But when you're getting into a couple of hours, I think maybe it's people who are just used to games lasting about 10 hours, 15 hours and being a bit disappointed. But I could tell off the bat that, it was going to be a fairly short experience because of the mechanic. There's only so much you can do.
Yeah, I think, I mean, had it carried on for another 4 hours, would you not have just reached the point where you're like, okay, I've done this?
Exactly. I'd be like, okay, but I was still enchanted with it by the end. I will say my one down point is the ending is pretty anticlimactic. There isn't much to it. I won't give anything away, but I was a bit like, oh, okay, that's it. Considering especially, I'd say the last 3 puzzles are kind of pretty difficult. So you're getting to a point where you're thinking, oh, okay, this is all going to be worth it. And then nothing really happens. So I think that would be something to improve on. But in general, I enjoyed the game. Again, it'd be cool to see if they did some DLC for it, because it'd be quite easy to do that. Just add some extra puzzles. So we'll see. But yeah, all in all, I'd say a nice idea for a game, a pretty gradual difficulty curve, some nice little animations. And as long as you're not worried about the length of it, it's pretty enjoyable.
What happens when you get things wrong?
What happens when you get things wrong? All it says is it doesn't light up at the top to show that you've done the right thing. So you can get things wrong quite a lot, and it almost encourages you to swap in characters and see what happens. So, for example, in the graveyard scene, in the graveyard panel, you can have one person dead and the other person mourning their death. Oh, and you could just switch those characters around, and then suddenly someone else is mourning their death. So that's pretty cool. That
nice.
and the animations swap around, and it makes it a fun thing to just have a bit of fun with. And I guess it encourages that with the bonus little objectives that they want you to do as well.
Yeah, I really like that. That's cool.
Check it out. The only thing is like I say, it's about 3 to 5 hours. But if you're happy with that, then give it a go.
Hey everybody, this is Shorter Than Bar from the Adventure Games Podcast. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you'd like to listen to the entire episode, you can do so either on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Podbean, and all other major podcast platforms. Basically, wherever you listen to podcasts. Or you can listen at the link below. Hope to see you there.